Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Jody, for that wonderful introduction. I feel like so warm.
I know. I feel a lot better than
like we're friends.
A lot to live up to. Yeah, that's great.
So thank you so much for that. If you haven't heard of us yet, we are Forgent. We are an employee engagement software company that is working on perfecting the continuous listening strategies in organizations across the country and globally. My name is Josh Drain. I live in Boston. I have a beautiful family. And this is Alexander.
Yeah, I'm Alexander. I also live in Boston, have a family as well. And here's some more stuff about me that we can read later.
Yeah, you guys can check out those slides if you really care that much about
Let's dig deep.
So,
let's get going.
So decoding engagement. Alexander and I started on a journey just to first off define engagement, because you've probably known how big of a challenge that can be. Like, what is engagement? Everyone interprets it their own way. What does it look like? We just tried to streamline that, and to be honest, we failed.
We still don't know. Spoiler alert, no good definition here. But the journey has helped us better understand some of the key components that go into that engagement strategy, and really some actionable steps that we can take to boost that engagement.
So one thing that we wanted to do here is we've compiled 12 things that we've learned from leading experts. We've podcasted, we've blogged, we've interviewed these people in person, and we found some really cool stuff that we want to just pass along to you. So we're just going to go through the 12 steps. We have some great takeaways. We've got some great things to remember from this, and we will again make these slides completely available for all of you. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
Number 1. If you have the addict mad at you, then you're doing great.
Don't you just love that tagline?
It makes me wonder what are you doing to have an addict mad at you, and I guess keep doing it.
And unfortunately we can't take credit for this wonderful phrase. This comes from our friend Cy Wakeman. She likes to call herself a drama researcher. She's a New York Times best-selling author. We got to meet her in person at the Work Human Conference this year. She is absolutely fantastic. She actually told us a little bit about what we can do to improve our engagement strategies, and it's all around accountability. So let's just go ahead and listen to that.
So the same behavior can't play on the high accountable at the same time.
Right.
So I started life out as a therapist, and you're always going to be picking off somebody. If you have the addict mad at you, you're doing great.
Right.
And so for people to say, I'm going to do X and engage everyone, it's a fallacy, because if I hold incredibly high standards, I'll pick up the low accountable. If I lower my standards to please the low accountable, I'll pick up the high accountable, who know it's doable. And that's really the key. Is you're always going to have somebody upset at you. You just need to make sure it's the right people that are upset.
Got it.
All right, so that audio seemed to be pretty quiet on our end. You guys go ahead in the chat. Let us know if that was loud enough or not, because we can go to our plan B. But with that said, pretty much what she was talking about is, you
can't engage everybody. All the time we try this, we altruistically, I think. We want everyone to be happy, we want everyone to be engaged, but the fact of the matter is it's just not going to happen. And we have such a limited amount of resources, limited amount of time, that if we try to engage those people that it's not going to happen, it's going to be a waste of effort.
Yeah, I mean, if you're focusing solely on engaging your disengaged people, you're not going to go very far. But when you start to focus on the middle of the bell curve and the people who are high accountables or highly engaged people in the workforce, that's when you start to see the entire company start to shift to this culture.
And that's that piece, right? Of the folks that are disengaged, try to focus the effort on those that are highly accountable in that group, and those efforts will yield a lot more, as opposed to just a blanket, here's an engagement strategy, everybody should benefit, and hope for the best.
Yeah, so some things for you to remember. Don't try and engage everybody. It's just not going to work out. Make sure to engage those people that you care about most being at work, and what that looks like, and that will give you better results.
And so tomorrow, your take-home piece from Sai today is tomorrow, try to make a list. Outline some key traits and attributes that characterize what an engaged employee in your unique organization looks like, making sure that accountability is part of that picture. And then actually make a list of some of your direct reports. Put some names to those attributes to try to better understand what does that employee look like at this organization, and then make sure that as you try to develop that employee engagement strategy and plan, it's with those folks in mind, not just some ambiguous set of employees.
Yeah,
right.
Man, we're off to a great start.
Okay.
Sai is amazing. Go check her out for sure. The second point
technology won't fix your engagement problem. Now, this kind of hurts my heart a little bit as an engagement vendor, as a tech vendor here. I'm like, well, but it'll really help. And it will, but it can. However, an over-reliance on technology is not going to fix it.
Yeah, we're saying don't start there. At least Jason Averbook sat down in an interview with us. He is the CEO and co-founder of LeapGen. He gives us such an amazing thought on this. Unfortunately, we got to take a step back before we look at the tech and start to look at the digital. We also went to Plan B on our audio here, so let us know how it comes across.
There's two things. There's digital and there's
or not.
Okay. And the way that the people function, HR, deliver.
Hang on real quick. We're going to disconnect this. I'm going to go to the built-in inputs. This should fix our
First things today
there
needs to be with a digital first mind.
Let's try that again. Everybody pay attention. Here we go.
There's two things. There's digital and there's technology.
Okay.
And the way that the people function, HR, delivers things today needs to be with a digital first mindset. So how do I deliver in a digital way? And digital is made up of 4 components: mindset, people, process, and tech.
Okay.
The technology fuels that vision, it fuels the strategy. That's the mindset. The vision and strategy are the mindset.
Sure.
The people component are who is my workforce? Who do I want them to be? How do they work? What's the best way to reach them? My
Right.
processes is what's the best way to engage or motivate them in a way that meets them where they are.
Sure.
Not takes them, makes them go somewhere else,
Right.
but meets them where they are. And then once I've got that, the technology component is what fuels that.
Right.
Unfortunately, after 20 some years doing this, people continue to spend money on technology as the bullet.
Right.
And say, hey, I see this shiny object in a piece of technology. Let's buy it and put it in.
Right.
And it'll fix my engagement problem, and it won't.
Right.
It won't without those other components.
So don't expect to fix the engagement problem with a shiny new toy, even if it was our shiny new toy.
And that's hard to do, right? Because we love to think that the technology will solve all our problems, but it's the root of the problem, which is, have you identified what you're trying to solve for? You don't even know what to measure, and you're just trying to implement this employee engagement software. So let's get clear on the digital before we move on. All right, so that's our big remember this: the mindset, people, process, and tech.
So tomorrow, schedule 3 meetings, 3 individuals, individual contributors in your organization, and ask them what they think about the HR tech that you're implementing in your organization. All right, try to understand whether or not these folks have a positive mindset. Do they understand the process? Do they understand why we're doing it? And do they see outcomes of implementing this technology? Because if they don't, then there might be some more legwork that needs to happen before you start seeing the results you're looking for with that technology.
Awesome.
Number 3, secrets we stole from Walmart. We broke into their secret factory, we hacked the safe, and this is what we found.
That is exactly what we did. We are adventurers of the highest sort. We actually got in touch with Eric Rowley. He is actually the director of organizational design and change management at Walmart. Actually, a really good family friend of ours.
Yeah.
And I just want to keep in mind that he is the leader of change management for 2.1 million employees around the globe.
It's a lot of employees.
To implement change across that many people, it must be a big task for him. It must be very daunting, but he actually shared with us his secret. In this clip, he gives us 2 formulas. Let's go ahead and listen to those.
Think of the formula this way: performance equals ability times engagement times environment. Again, ability, engagement, environment. Formula number 2 is this: how engaged am I equals. And now this is very individual in my own head, okay? So how engaged am I equals my belief in my ability. Like, can I even do this? Multiplied by my trust in the outcome. If I do it, will I hit the objective? Will I get the reward? And then multiplied by a third thing, which is value. How much do I want the objective or the reward? Okay? So again, my belief in my ability times my trust in the outcome times how much do I want that outcome?
All right. Well, let's just unpack that. Take a look here, right? These are the
2 formulas.
the 2 formulas that he just talked about, and the performance key, right? Because that's technically what we are aiming for, at least
the whole point of engagement, right? Is
Yeah.
performance.
Your
That's
executives
what we
want the performance because they want the results. So we start there with the ability to do the task, times engagement, times what is the work environment, which we could unpack all day long. We don't have time, but
basically,
focusing on that is
are
huge.
our employees able to do the job, right? That's in the environment that has been set by the organization.
That's right. And then as we drill into engagement, this is kind of what the formula is.
And these three factors, I think, are really fascinating. This idea of our belief in our ability. And what I love about this formula too, is specifically in the context of engagement, is it helps focus on the individual elements of engagement, that we have to have a belief in our own ability. Okay, so if an employee is not engaged, part of the problem may be one of these three components that begins with this belief in their ability. Do they think they can do it, right? Do they believe in the outcome? Have we set a precedent in the past at the organization to say, yeah, if you do this, then this will happen, right? If you perform well, you will receive benefits, all right? And then do they care about the outcome? Is what they're doing something that intrinsically speaks to them, or is there something that is the task that they're doing something that they really believe adds value to the company, to society, or whatever the case may be? But if they don't care about the outcome, then their ability to perform is going to be severely hindered.
And think about the individuality here, right? We're talking about the individual employee times 2.1 million, if you will. We're trying to solve a very complex problem with a fairly easy formula. But as you implement this into your company, it's very easy to say, is engagement low?
Right.
Well, let's look at these three factors and see if we can't pinpoint what's low, because that's affecting everything else.
100%. And to that end, how do we implement it? Well, I think one of the big areas that we have where we can start implementing some of these ideologies, and this is the one take-home piece that you can't really take home tomorrow per se, but as you evaluate the performance evaluation criteria, okay, when that rolls around, does that evaluation criteria include engagement as a factor of performance? I think all too often we think, how well did you perform? How well did you perform? But not realizing that an engagement piece is a huge factor that influences that performance. So if an employee's own opinion of their engagement levels aren't being reflected in this performance evaluation, then I think we're missing a huge piece of understanding how well is that employee performing and what could they be doing better.
So good. Eric Rowley, thanks for letting us break into your safe there a little bit.
Number 4, the brain hears you, but it's not listening.
Okay, so we chose that mainly because what we're about to watch has a lot of psychology and big words in it. So it was a simplification.
Big for us.
Simplification for us, really, when it comes down to. So we're looking at Howard Ross here. He's the author of Our Search for Belonging, Everyday Bias, Reinventing Diversity. He sat down for an in-person interview with us, along with our good friend Jason Lawrenson. And man, he just
roll the clip.
All right.
Roll it. It's great.
Well, there are usually, for me, 3 distinctions that we're always working at. The first is the cognitive behavioral piece, like what should we know and what do we know we need to do. So that's where skills and knowledge come into place. And the second is the emotional piece. That is, how is this impacting people emotionally, and what are we trying to communicate emotionally as a culture? And then the third is the more challenging piece, which is the ontological piece, and that is how are we being about the subject. And so most organizations focus almost exclusively on the cognitive and behavioral piece. Sure. Let me give you the information, let me tell you what to do. But in actuality, the other 2 pieces are more important. Think about personal change. Dieting is a great example. We know obesity is a huge problem. I've had times in my life struggled with my weight. What I noticed was when I was 40 pounds heavier than I am now, I knew exactly what to do. I had all the information in the world. I used to run a wellness program, and it didn't do me a damn bit of good because I wasn't in touch with what was the emotional state that had me eat. In my case, it's related to stress. And what's the mindset, the ontological piece, the mind frame that I have. And I think that if we realize that the right behavior evolves from those emotional and ontological pieces more than the reverse.
Yeah.
So good. Okay.
And that's so true too, right? I think all too often we really have this emphasis on if someone is performing one way or another, that performance is directly and exclusively linked to their ability to understand the task and then to execute and to complete that task. But that's only part of the picture, right?
Yeah, that was the cognitive behavioral part that he was talking about. Right. Then he touched on this emotional part, that if we can deepen our emotions, and also that ontological component, our mental predisposition to that task. The whole idea is that if we deepen our engagement efforts, if we deepen the experience at work, then all of a sudden all 3 of these come together in like the holistic approach of engaging our people, getting the work done, and dealing with challenges.
Okay, yeah.
All right, there you go.
That's it.
So
Nailed it.
remember those things.
And then, so tomorrow, right? Next time you're providing feedback to someone, ask yourself, before diving in and trying to dissect why this person didn't perform or did perform potentially to the level that you expected, try to ask yourself the question, is there something more that this person's lacking outside of the knowledge necessary to do the task? Because oftentimes, especially with those that are typically high performers, oftentimes we'll find that there is an emotional predisposition or an intellectual bias there that exists that's preventing them from doing what you would be expecting them to do. So trying to just take a step back and in that feedback understand, hey, what else is there in this feedback picture, as opposed to just, hey, you didn't do the job because you didn't get it done. You clearly don't know how to do it. There's more to it than that. So ask yourself that question next time you're providing feedback.
Dude, that's great. Great way to start. Number 5, no need to water the employees. We're not talking about a garden here, right? We're talking about a fire hose.
Yeah, because sometimes we have these engagement strategies, and in HR, we love them. They're fantastic. And we then try to force them on the employees. We think, here, take this.
Be happy at work.
Come to this mandatory activity.
You'll have fun playing softball. We promise.
You will love it, right? That's not necessary. It's not going to work. But B, it's not necessary, right? And so we had the opportunity to sit down with Lewis Garrett, and a partner at Mercer and an IO psychologist, and just had a fantastic opportunity to learn a little bit about some really fundamental insights on how to get people more engaged.
Yeah, let's roll it.
As I say, I think most people right now just feel that many engagement programs are something that the organization does to them. They're as if they are like inanimate objects that need to be moved or motivated. I don't know about you, but I've never met a person who wants to go to work and do a bad job or to feel disengaged. People don't naturally, they come to work wanting to like their work. People have a desire to do that. And so the question for management or for leadership then is, how do you unlock that energy?
How do you unlock that energy? I love how he refers to it as energy.
That's there. It's already there. You don't have to give them the energy. The energy is there to be unlocked. So instead of saying, oh man, we have to energize these people. We got to get them engaged.
I know they don't want to be here, and we got to make them want to be here with our engagement strategy.
And what that looks like realistically, right? Okay, because nobody ever says that, right? We understand. But what that looks like realistically is this idea that the higher up we get, the bigger picture that we're trying to plan, we sometimes lose sight that the engagement strategy is made to represent real people. Mm-hmm. Not just the workforce. What is the workforce? The workforce is made up of unique individuals. And so trying to keep those unique individuals in mind is critical to making sure that we're not pushing.
Yeah, huge. Yeah. So just remember, give your people the benefit of the doubt. They want to be engaged. They want to be there, or else they wouldn't have taken the job in the first place. It's a rare case. And so what can we do to realign their passions and what they want with the work that we are trying to get them to do?
So tomorrow, grab a copy of your most recent employee engagement survey results. If you don't have any employee engagement survey results, survey employees, get some so that you can get some feedback.
We'll help you with that.
And then compare that to compare your employee engagement strategy to the feedback that you've received from your employees. Is it meshing? Is it aligning? Or is the strategy something that potentially might have a personal bias that we're trying to push onto employees to say, oh yeah, this is what will make them engaged, but it's not really aligning with that feedback that we've received. And it may sound simple, but it's shocking how many clients that we talk to that they just don't get that piece, that, hey, the feedback that we're getting and the strategy that we're implementing aren't aligned. Mm-hmm. So do a double check. Go tomorrow, grab your results, grab your strategy. They should both be tangible things because it doesn't just happen, and make sure that they are aligned.
Yeah, and we understand, side note, that like trying to take those results to the executives and make some of those changes can be a challenge. That's a topic for another day. We'd love to cover some of those things. We just don't have the time. So start there.
Start there.
It's a good place to start.
It's a good place to start.
All right, number 6. All you need is love. This is
happy. It just brings a smile to my face.
This is owed to one of our good friends, Jason Larson.
Yeah.
He's been here very often on Achieve. He does a lot of work here. Right. We had the opportunity to hang out with him pretty much the entire time at the Work Human conference. We did a lot of interviews with these leaders with him as the face. So he's a keynote speaker, author, advisor, and does leadership training.
All around nice guy.
Just a nice guy. And Jason, if you're listening, your wife would be proud of this picture. Well done. Let's go ahead and he highlights something that is so simple and so mind-bogglingly just spot on about engagement in the workplace that we just have to share. So let's go ahead and listen.
Most employers are still viewing work as a contract with the employee. We still treat it that way. Yes, employees come to work because they need a paycheck, but for employees, work is about way more than that paycheck. Work is a relationship. And so when we think about work experience design, we have been doing exactly the opposite over the last 30 years in our organizations. We've been engineering for efficiency and lean and all these things. We've squeezed all the social space out for maximum productivity. Relationship formation and the cultivation of relationships is never productive work, but it may be the most important work that can happen in your organization.
Just let it sink in.
Yeah, like a relationship. Because when we think of it that way, now all of a sudden the strategies that we're trying to implement, I think, okay, would I try to count the vacation days that my wife takes? Probably wouldn't work out super well, right?
Balance, like how many times you've done the dishes versus she's done the. Is this fair or not?
And that whole concept that in a real relationship, in any meaningful relationship with your spouse, a best friend, like it doesn't work. So why do we try to do it so often in the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, so practical. I know a lot of times we are too complicated when it comes to engagement and our engagement strategies and implementing these softwares. It's simple. It's about the relationship. So Jason's test is, would this play well in any of your personal relationships? Before you implement any strategy, think like, would this work well? Because if it's not going to work well with someone that you love and someone that you're close to, it's most likely not going to work with your employees.
Right. And I love that last piece that he finished on. It's never a productive work. And that's so huge to focus on. This idea that this is a person-to-person connection. These relationships are between two humans. And to develop and to foster those relationships, it takes time. You can't scale that. Right. You just can't. And understandably, some organizations are larger than others, so it is more difficult. I mean, that's just it. Sometimes it's hard.
But it is so extremely important. If you are dipping into that emotional equity, it's and there's nothing to draw on, it's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a big,
So,
absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Let's hit number 7.
Okay. 7, engagement by the numbers. Sometimes we get so mechanical, I think, with our engagement. Sometimes we try to outline it too much, but that's not the most efficient way to do it.
You said that kind of like a robot. Is that what you were going for?
It was a play on words. I'm glad someone got it.
That's good.
I practiced it.
This is Lindsay McGregor, also a guest with Achieve. She did a keynote in the fall with Achieve in New York. Primed to perform the 3 Ps of Tomo.
Yeah.
Some of our famous.
Oh, it's fantastic. And we're not going to cover Tomo here because I think it would be almost insulting to try to cover her Tomo.
Right. It's her thing.
She does an amazing job. If you don't know what Tomo
videos.
is, Google Lindsay McGregor and figure it out because it is phenomenal. Extremely insightful, very helpful, and we wish we could package it all together here in a couple of minutes, but it's just it's too much.
So she breaks it. So she actually talks about performance here, and she breaks it out into two forms of performance. Let's go ahead and listen.
Great leaders, what we found they do is balance the tactical and the adaptive. Tactical is codifying all your past learnings. Adaptive is learning for the future. What do we need to change and grow and learn and experiment with? And when you get those 2 things right, you get a really powerhouse organization.
Wow,
that was it.
That's it. That's fantastic. I mean, it's so simple. This adaptive and tactical piece, right? The adaptive performance allows and rewards mental effort, right? The tactical performance is just a strict following the set of rules, and there has to be a balance there. But it's so easy, I think, to rely on creating rules and policies and structures in place that force employees into a tactical performance.
Right. And have you ever had those employees where like they get so wrapped up in like the benefit or the bonus or the tactical, all of the
or customer relations, right? Like how do you respond to a customer? You follow the script.
Sure.
How do you place this purchase?
We've completely removed, some of the creative components to it. And that's totally fine. Like there's a lot of personalities that are all about that, but also we need to be unlocking our people as best as possible. And the best way that we can do that is to focus on tactical performance, but also allow that adaptive performance to come through.
And that adaptive performance is absolutely a precursor to innovation. So if you want a workforce that is always looking to do things better, then you have to create an atmosphere where they know that when they are performing, when they are working, they can be adaptive. They can think about new things. They can think outside the box. They won't be punished for it. They'll be rewarded for it. And that is how organizations stay on top.
Yeah, so good. So remember, teams and orgs should be a healthy combination of tactical and adaptive performance.
Yeah. So tomorrow, find 3 other people. Okay. Don't draw on the same 3. Find 3 other people. Set up a 10-minute meeting and ask them what is the most restrictive. What is most restrictive to them getting their job done. Mm-hmm. Okay. And brainstorm a fix. All right. Talk to them and figure out what is going on that is really preventing that adaptive performance. But start with a conversation. All right. Don't just brainstorm. But start with a conversation with at least 3 folks that are on the ground.
Yeah, and be willing to give up some of your favorite policies. Yeah. You know, there's some things that we just like harp on. This is how it is. But if that's getting in the way of that adaptive performance, then you are getting in the way of them being creative.
And innovation and success and all around goodness.
All right, next. Let's do this.
Number 8. Here we go. More communication does not mean more engagement. Communication is that. Almost, I think sometimes folks think of it as the silver bullet, right? This idea that we got to have better communication. With good communication, we'll get, better results, and people, communication is the key to unlocking, all the bottlenecks in an organization. And consultants and executive leadership talk about communication ad nauseum, but it's actually not just communication. Right?
Yeah, it actually goes a little deeper than that. David Horsager did a little interview with us, and yes, he blew our minds because he's like, you think it's a communication issue? It's not a communication issue. It's actually a trust issue.
I believe trust is the core issue to engagement. Sure. People might say communication. Well, we just throw communication. Communication's the issue. Right. Well, undergrad, I was a communication major, but I will argue communication is never the core issue. Clear communication is trusted. Right. Unclear isn't. Right. High character communication is trusted. Low character isn't. Sure. Consistent communication is trusted. Inconsistent isn't. Right. Compassionate, where I have intent for you, it's trusted. When I don't have intent for you in my communication, it's not trusted.
Trust, foundational. Absolutely right. And again, communication has become one of those catch-all phrases, and communication is very important, but making sure that we're doing it the right way. And I think one of the new
transparency.
Yeah. It's the new thing, right? Everyone's we need a transparent organization. You do, but it's really just the hipster cousin of communication. It's just a cool way.
That's right. Just trying to be transparent, and there can be too much transparency at work to the point where you don't trust that person anymore.
Yeah,
why would you confide in them if they're just going to be transparent about everything?
Right. There are some elements of work that shouldn't be transparent, and just making sure you have that balance, and that is where that trust piece comes in.
Yeah. I know that you're tired of hearing about trust. It's been a buzzword for a long time, but the reason why is because it is so foundational. I know there are a million books out there, a million speakers that do this, but the reason why they've locked onto trust is because trust is so foundational to the organization performing well.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So remember this, more communication is not a good strategy, not just more communication. What about the quality of that communication, and when does that communication take place?
So to get the better communication, we have to have that trust. So tomorrow, find an employee, make a promise to anyone in your organization about something not necessarily workflow related, and then follow through on that promise. Start building some of that trust equity that may have been lost in the daily flow of running an organization. So it's absolutely critical, right, that we have that trust foundation. So to do that, just start something small. Find something that you can do for somebody else that'll make their day.
And clean up your Slack.
We're talking about the channel, or
the app? Both. I'm actually talking about
metaphorically. And your
get rid of some of those channels, man. Okay, great. We're rolling along here. That was number 8. Number 9, choking in the weeds.
We're all trying to build this beautiful garden of a wonderful employee experience, a place where people can come and enjoy the work that they do, but we let the weeds in sometimes.
That's right.
It's choking us out.
Yeah, I mean, holy cow, especially in HR, right?
Yeah.
What would you deem are the weeds? Well, John Baldino comes in with some really awesome insights on this. So he's been doing this for a very long time. I hope you would recognize him because he's so
entrenched in HR. He's been doing it forever.
Yeah. Hugh Mariso, awesome. We just did a podcast with him that launched last week, so definitely go check that out. But we asked him, we just said, if there's one thing that you could get rid of within HR, what is the one thing that you would get rid of? And he talks about the minutia and how it chokes us in the weeds.
It has to be the minutia. We swim in so much minutia at organizations, and we have made the minutia into something much more major than it was ever intended to be. Counting hours of PTO, Right. I mean, it's software. Stick it in there and be done with it. To argue with someone for 3 days about, I think I have 17.75, not 17.25, right, is half a day worth the 3 days of back and forth of emails and stuff. I'm not saying give everybody what they want. Right. My point is, though, it's done. No, you have 17.25. I appreciate you being upset. It's done. It's done, right? So I want to wave a wand over just how much we get caught in the weeds with stuff. And because all we can see is the weeds, we make the weeds flourish, right? We feed it like crazy, and then we hate ourselves for it. Right. And that self-loathing in our work, especially if we're supposed to be the people who are driving a different perspective on culture and engagement and really the life behind the organization. If we are stuck in the weeds, so is everybody else. So is everybody else.
I love how we finished there. HR used to be, years ago, right, the company's self-defense mechanism, right? It's basically how it started, right? Coordinating all the administrative pieces of an internal set of individuals, the employees in an organization. But that's not where HR is anymore, right? We no longer do that. Like John just, like the end of his clip just mentioned, we're setting an example for the experience of an organization. We have the privilege to help do more than just answer 1,000 questions a day, right? Yeah. So we have to get beyond that. Okay.
I love to think about it as today's HR, not back in the day. Today's HR has the privilege of bringing potential to work. Your main job is to make sure that you are maximizing the purpose and the potential of the individuals that you oversee, not payroll, not all the little nitty gritty things. As much as your boss says that's the main thing.
And they are important, right?
Very important. We couldn't exist without them. Right. But if that's where you're stuck, is just thinking that that's it, and you're tired of people coming in and just railing on these little tiny things that don't matter so much, we might need to look at our own purpose in the organization.
And so those are the small details that prevent us from getting that real purpose in. There's a big, this open door policy is one of those things that is super popular. Open door, I have an open door policy. Why? I mean, if the openness or closeness of a door is the main indicator of how approachable you are as a person, you've already lost the fight. Okay, like people should just know you as a person, that they can come and ask you a question. That's fundamental, right? To just interpersonal relationships. So this idea that an open door policy is going to help you get there it's a fallacy. And what it does is it says, hey, my time is not valuable. You can come in anytime, disrupt whatever I'm doing, and as nice as that may sound to being facilitating, that gives an opportunity for those weeds to get in and to grow, right? Yeah. And it prevents us from strategizing big picture, things that would probably decrease the amount of drop-ins, decrease the amount of complaints, decrease the amount of the little details that have to be fixed and implemented and really taken care of. That's already, so it's cyclical, right? Yeah. And you gotta stop, find a time, and just get past it.
I love what you said there, dude. It's all about being proactive on some of these things, not just I'm here, I'm doing my thing. If you want to come talk, come do it. But other than that, you're not going to see me. Right. That doesn't work. We actually have a video that we're going to hope to share with you about holding one-on-ones and how to do that, what the benefits are, etc. For another time. But back to John. Let's just remember your time and your budget are extremely valuable. Don't let the small and unplanned details prevent you from taking care of the big picture.
And I think this note for tomorrow. Okay, it's something you do tomorrow. I think is, if you don't do any of the other 12 that we recommend, anybody can do this, and I think we should. Okay, block out a reoccurring do not disturb time on your company's calendar. Everyone has an internal calendar, Outlook, Google, whatever. Okay, and then print out a sign that says, "Working hard to make your work experience better. Please come back or send me an email." All right. Post that on your door, post that on your desk, post that somewhere where people who are just going to come up and say, hey, quick 30 seconds, which, by the way, that quick 30 seconds is on average 40 minutes long. Okay. Yeah. Prevent those from coming in because, hey, listen, if it's an emergency now, it'll be an emergency in an hour. Okay. Nothing's going to happen. Unless the building's on fire, you can probably take care of it after your do not disturb time. And by respecting that, by honoring that, you allow yourself the chance to take a step back and get a holistic picture of what can we do in this organization? How can we implement big change to help solve some of those other little problems that are coming.
Look, it's the spring. Yep. Great time to start pulling those weeds. So how about you start with your organization? Don't choke in the weeds. All right, number 10.
Company culture equals company brand.
So powerful.
Yeah, and
So powerful.
so profound. I think in order, the idea of tackling a great employee and a great customer experience, those are two monumental challenges. And so I think we have a tendency to bifurcate those, right? And we say company culture, company brand may be different, but they're not.
Right.
Even though different folks may be working on it, they're not.
Right. Kevin Martin, who it's just action-packed, 10 minutes of just great content that he gave us. We decided to extrapolate this one piece. He's a Chief Research Officer at Institute for Corporate Productivity, I4CP, if you ever heard of them. They do research on the same level of Burson and Gallup. Amazing insights that they're coming up with. Definitely feel free to check him out. But he tells us a little bit more about that branding.
The first step is to really understand what your culture is and what people are talking about. Because so tied to culture is the employer brand. Right. So the employer, right? And so the employer brand is how people actually experience your organization. Do you even know what that is?
So powerful. Okay, so companies spend so much money and so much time developing the perfect customer experience. Right. And sometimes they forget about their employees. What if the brand that you're promoting to your customers is different than the brand that the employees are experiencing?
If you're trying to promote, for example, positive customer service, right? That says the relationship between my customers and the folks in-house is a great relationship. Well, is there a good relationship between the folks in-house and the folks at the top? Is there? Huh? Right?
We would hope so. And so just know that, like, you've heard these quotes all the time, that like when you invest in your employees, you are investing in your customers, because whatever attitude they have will translate into the customer experience.
They're the first people to experience the employer's brand, right? Are the employees.
Right.
So bearing that in mind as we develop our strategy will help us make sure that we're, first off, in sync, that we're not sending mixed messages to the customers and the employees, and then making sure that employees don't feel like, hey, we spend so much time and energy on the customers,
Yeah, it would be so cool if you could get your company to the point where, like, your employees are excited to wear the logo on their jacket, or they've got the backpack with the logo on it. I mean, do we even care about the logo? Are we even sharing it out? There's some things to consider, and I know that that's not HR's realm, is the branding piece, but also know that that brand needs to translate into the employee experience.
100%.
All right.
Okay, so remember that. And tomorrow, this may be the piece that has you step out of your comfort zone a little bit. Schedule time to grab some coffee with someone in marketing. Okay, if us in HR, if we don't understand the brand, we got to figure it out. So dust off again. We'll hopefully already have the employee experience report out that you pulled out from earlier, but grab a copy of it. Look at what is the employee feedback? How are they experiencing the company? And then go grab some time. Go grab a chance to grab a time with marketing to
go down to third floor.
Yeah, where the lights are
the
off.
Scary third floor.
They're all there editing pictures and stuff, right?
I have no idea who's down there. There's probably colors everywhere.
It's probably a big party.
Yeah,
marketing, man, it's great.
Yeah.
So have that connection, bridge that silo, bridge that gap, because in reality, it's already bridged. Mm-hmm. So just make sure in the organization that you have that connection.
Cool. Okay. With this next one, number 11, we're not trying to get you in trouble a little bit, but we are just saying,
just ask for forgiveness.
Just ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. There's actually legal disclosure at the end of the slideshow that if you get fired for taking this advice, it's not our fault. So just a heads up.
But we think we should throw it out there, because we talked to one of our friends, Jacob Morgan.
Yeah.
Wonderful podcast. He shared some wonderful insights. But
and he has his big 3 elements of work that he talks about on his TEDx. His TED Talk that you absolutely have to go check out.
His book is great.
His book is phenomenal. Definitely check out his main material. But there was something in the podcast that was a little unique that really stood out to us that we want to share here.
Yeah, we pretty much asked him the question, like, well, what if there's no buy-in from the executives? Right. What if the C-suite is not on board? What do we do? And this is what he told us.
If I were a manager at a company and my executives were just not, they're like, no, that's crazy, just go sell stuff. Yeah. I would try to be that bold manager, that bold leader, and I would do it anyway. So I would, within reason, obviously, I'm limited by budget or whatnot, but there are still things that I can do. I can still treat my employees well. I can still change the way that I give feedback. I can change the way that I reward and recognize people. I can change the way that learning and growth and development opportunities are presented. I can change the way work gets done as far as flexible work. I can potentially look at different technologies for my team to use. I can still do things as a manager, as a leader, inside of my organization who is not at the top, the top rank, so to speak.
Right. There's always going to be something in the way, right? I mean, there's the path to a great employee experience is never clear. There will always be something there. There's always going to be a naysayer, someone to oppose change. Someone says, oh, this is how it's always been done. It's worked in the past, or this is how I did it because, and so that's how it should be done because that's how I came up in the organization. And so there's just all these things that will get in the way of us actually making change.
Yeah, I love how he started like listing off things that he would do. The reason why we showed this clip is for you just to think like, am I making excuses? Am I letting like their bad attitudes dictate my performance at work? And I understand that there's within reason, we said, but there's always something that you can do. And I doubt that if you would implement something and start to see success, that the execs would come by and be like, oh, that's actually a really bad idea. Why would you? Why would you do that? So take a risk, do something bold. Don't be afraid to try.
Right. So tomorrow, write down a list of 5 things you've been wanting to do to help make your employees' work experience better. They're in there. They're in the back of your head. The last time you went to a conference, the last time you saw an actually helpful webinar, right? Potentially. There's some nuggets that are sitting there, some things that you've been thinking about. Man, I wish I could do this. I wish we could do that. Just do it. All right. I mean, again, within reason, just do it. One of the worst decisions is indecision. Okay, indecision will absolutely kill progress. So if we don't act, we're not going to improve, and that's one of the worst. That's one of the worst things that we could be doing. So think of 5, write them down, pick one, and just do it. Mm-hmm. Just do it.
That's right. Don't pick the first one because you might go to jail for that one.
3 or 4 is usually right in the sweet spot.
There you go. And finally, number 12. We saved this one for the very end. Drum roll. The greatest unrealized asset. Ooh, gotta be careful there. Asset that you have in your company. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take a second. What do you think it is?
You're sitting there and you're thinking, what's the greatest? People. People are the greatest asset. They always say that. They do, and they're a good asset. Definitely a good asset. Are they the greatest? Natalie Kogan might disagree.
Our friend Natalie Kogan actually tells us that happiness is the greatest asset, and a lot of times I think we start to think of happiness as like this fluffy, why should we be happy? Why should we throw flowers at work? Like, we're here to get a job done. Let's not go here. But man, she is very scientific about this. This is the longest clip that we play for good reason. So definitely listen in.
The biggest myth that I am out there to bust is that happiness does not mean being positive all the time. That is a myth. That is a misnomer. It doesn't. We live in this culture that tells us like, turn that frown upside down or turn the negative into the positive. And we think happiness is like, that's not it. Of course, part of being emotionally healthy is the ability to experience joy, is the ability to, through gratitude, find positive things. But it also means learning how to embrace all of the different emotions that we feel as human beings, and to how do we have resilience to get through the difficult ones. If research shows that when employees feel better, they're more motivated, they work harder, they're more productive. There's so much research that shows that companies with happier employees are more profitable and have higher revenue. So we can go all the way there. Right. And they're more resilient through challenges. And they cultivate a culture of psychological safety and collaboration that research shows comes up with more creative ideas. Then it's really hard to say that employee happiness is an extra. But it begins with shifting our mindsets around exactly the question you asked. What does it mean to truly have emotional health?
Right. You can't ignore it.
So good.
Happiness is a critical component to the workforce. It's a critical component for people anywhere being productive, being efficient.
Let's just tease out some of these themes, right? I think one thing that you talked about is if they're happy, they have that emotional depth in the workplace, which means that when challenges come, they have roots in the organization to be able to better handle them.
Yeah, when they need to work the weekend, because it's going to happen. When they need to do a 90-hour week, it's going to happen, And if employees are by and large happy at the organization, then those sorts of asks won't be met with resentment. They won't be met. There won't be a resistance there because there's that roots, like you said, that bank that they can draw on.
And she pretty much solved all of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like if we're happier, we solve for like the psychological safety in the organization. And then it just goes up all the way till she talked about the financial piece of it. We can go all the way to the point of proving that happier employees are more productive, which get more results, which result in more income, which means
better successful organization. Right?
It sounds simple.
It does, but it's very hard because how do you know? How do you know how your employees are feeling all the time, right? I mean, it's a tough ask, and happiness, like you said, it's not this. It doesn't have to be always positive. It doesn't mean that everyone's always walking around, smiling. I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't smile.
Right.
It's not fake. It's this emotional health. Like, can they experience real human emotions without negative feedback?
Yeah, and how do you know is the real question. One of the things that we're working on at Forgent is to create a non-intrusive way where we can survey individuals on a daily basis to get a pulse on how they're feeling, because then you can start to look at the data and you can start to make inferences that you couldn't otherwise. Then we've got this year survey, and then we've got quarterly surveys, and we're trying to get down to the point where it's like, it's a habit. And it's absolutely necessary, and people don't mind.
Right, because we got to know how our employees are feeling. In order for us to better lead them, we have to have that information. I mean, we have to, absolutely have to.
Yeah, great. So with that said, sorry, go ahead.
We'll do our recap real quick. Don't underestimate the value of being happy. Okay, tomorrow, pick up a copy of your most recent. By now, you should have that survey results. Pretty handy. Do you find happiness or emotional health anywhere represented on that survey? A lot of the times we like to focus on the buzzword, and this kind of ties back to why we tried to define employee engagement. Everybody focuses on engagement. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Well, it means a lot of the stuff we just talked about, but one of those components is absolutely happiness and emotional health. Is that represented on your employee survey? Are your employees being polled? Are they being asked how their emotional health is? Are they being asked if they're happy? If not, start brainstorming solutions, because you got to know. You have to know if the organization is a happy place to be, because if it's not, again, you'll be scraping the bottom of the barrel for talent. Your best employees are going to leave for a place that makes them happier. There won't be that loyalty without that happiness.
So good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. These were just 12 things that we found in our hunt for understanding employee engagement, but we also have a whole series of videos that we have put together with you in mind. We are talking to the leading experts. We are looking at the research, and we're trying to translate it into practical things that you can do to implement engagement in the workplace.
Everybody knows engagement's good. You know that being nice to your employees is important. You know that making them feel valued matters. You know that there should be autonomy at work and respect, and you know all those things. Okay? And we understand and respect that. So we're trying our best to give you some of the most practical insights that you can use in order to make a difference in your organization.
So we're leaving them in the comments. We just dropped a link in there for you to check out some of these videos. Again, they're fun. We are not going to bore you. We aren't going to quote a bunch of Gallup polls at you.
Make you feel bad for the low engagement numbers.
They're just a way for you to watch through them. They're a way for you to get a good feel for what you can do in your organization based on what we've learned from the people that we've talked about.
Right.
Super great. We spent a lot of time on them, so feel free to go check those out.
And feel free to give us a call. Shoot us an email.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Fred and Sandy, sorry we can't get to your questions. But again, our emails are right here. Please just copy and paste your questions, send it over to us. We will get that to you immediately. But thanks again for joining us. We're going to go ahead and kick this right back over to Jody. But
thanks for spending some time with us.
It's been great.
Thanks, guys.